This is William Michael of the Classical Liberal Arts Academy, and in this video I'd like to provide students with some help working through the content of Lesson 3, in which we're going to be studying Articles 9 through, through 14, Articles 9 through 14. You can see the topic of this lesson, of Lesson 3, is breathings. Breathings. Another name for this topic would be aspiration. Aspiration or breathings in Greek. Now, you might be wondering, what in the world does breathing in Greek mean? And if we look at other words, if I can find some Greek words, you'll notice that when Greek words begin with a vowel, like here we see the word akoluthos, akoluthos, you'll notice there's a symbol above the first vowel. Anytime we have a word that begins with a vowel, here we see ephilee, ephilee, and we see a symbol above that epsilon at the beginning. Here we see ephilun, ephilun, and we've got a symbol above this vowel. These are very small. I can barely read some of these. But you can see what's important is to see that there's a symbol above the vowels at the beginning of Greek words. Now what those symbols are signs that tell us whether we should add a rough breathing sound before that vowel. And that's what we're studying here in Article 9. We're studying Greek breathings. All right, so let's read Article 9 together. Every initial vowel, so a vowel at the beginning of a word, every initial vowel or diphthong, if a diphthong is at the beginning of the word, has either the rough or the smooth breathing. So every word that begins with a vowel or a diphthong has a rough or smooth breathing joined to that vowel or diphthong. Now these symbols are a little difficult to read here, but if I zoom in a little bit, it might be clearer. You can see this is a C-shaped apostrophe symbol. Notice that it's shaped like a C, shaped like a C with the points of the C pointing towards the right. That's the symbol of rough breathing in Greek. So if you see that symbol above a vowel at the beginning of the word, it shows you that you need to add rough breathing before the sound of the vowel. That's what rough breathing means. All right? And then the smooth breathing, which is like a backwards C-shaped apostrophe or a regular apostrophe, that means that there's no breathing to be added to that vowel. So you can just ignore that actually. But the rough breathing mark, the C-shaped breathing mark, tells you to add rough breath or aspiration before that vowel. That's explained here in the lesson. The rough breathing, which in Latin is called spiritus asper, which just means rough breath. The rough breathing is pronounced as the letter H in English, which is sounded before the vowel. So the rough breathing symbol is really to be thought of as the English letter H. So if the rough breathing mark was put over the letter alpha, we would read it as ha, ha. And if the smooth breathing mark was seen above the alpha, we would read it as ah, ah. That's what's signified by the two breathing marks in Greek. Let's go on and continue this lesson. The smooth breathing, which in Latin is called spiritus lenis, smooth breathing, is not sounded. That's why I said you can simply ignore it. So we've got rough breathing marked by the C-shaped symbol, and soft breathing, or really no breathing, marked by the normal apostrophe. We then have two words here in the lesson that show the importance of understanding this. We have the word, now notice these two words. The word is spelled Omicron, Rho, Omicron, Sigma. The second word is spelled Omicron, Rho, Omicron, Sigma. Same spellings. But this first word has a rough breathing, and the second word has a smooth breathing. The differences in breathing mark the differences in these two words. That's how significant these breathing marks can be. If we read it with rough breath, it's one word. If we read it with no breath or with smooth breathing, it's a different word. So this can be very important. This first word has the rough breathing over the Omicron, and you can see here it's transliterated. It would be read as horos, horos. So that rough breathing mark is like adding an H before the vowel. Horos, horos. And the second word with smooth breathing would just be read as oros, oros, with no breath, no H at the beginning. So that's what's meant by rough breathing and smooth breathing in Greek. And you'll see these symbols in every Greek word that starts with a vowel or diphthong. They're very, very common, and you need to know what those symbols represent and how they're to be read. That's the point of article number 9. In article 10, we read that upsilon at the beginning of a word, initial upsilon, always has rough breathing. Initial upsilon always has rough breathing. So there's no such thing as a word in Greek which starts with the sound oo with no rough breathing. It always will be who, and it'll have the rough breathing mark above it. That's article 10. Article 11 tells us how breathing is marked on diphthongs. So remember, diphthongs, we have two vowels. So the two vowels are spoken together as one sound, but what if there's rough breathing and we've got two vowels written? How is the sign of rough breathing added if we've got a diphthong? And the answer is that it's placed over the second vowel. You can see this word down here. It's got the breathing mark over the second vowel. That's another helpful sign that you're looking at a diphthong, because the second vowel is marked with the breathing mark. That's how diphthongs are marked. So you can see how this is transliterated. It's the alpha iota diphthong with a rough breathing mark, and that's written as H-A-I. So it's pronounced as hi, hi, hi-re-o, hi-re-o, hi. That's the diphthong alpha iota with a rough breathing. Hi. So that's simple enough, I think, just to remember that the diphthong has breathing marked over the second vowel. Now, we've also got those improper diphthongs, which have the iota subscript, and they will simply have the breathing mark over the first vowel, which is the vowel that's actually written and read. So that's simple enough. So that's the content of article number 11. It just talks about how breathing is shown for diphthongs. Article 12, we read in compound words, words that are composed of two parts of speech. So we have the word pro-oran, and we see it's composed of the words pro and horan. Notice rough breathing. Pro-horan, but the word has no breathing. Pro-oran. So we have the word horan joined to pro, and the breathing is dropped. So in compound words, the rough breathing is not written, though it must originally have been pronounced. But it's not written, and normally we will never pronounce it when we speak and when we read classical or biblical Greek. Okay? So that's just a note on compound words there. Number 13, Article 13 tells us that every initial rho has the rough breathing. So any Greek word that begins with a consonant rho has rough breathing added to it. So here we see the word rhetor, which is the Greek word for orator. Rhetor is where we get the word rhetoric from. Notice the R and the H. Actually, though, the H is pronounced before the R in Greek words. In English, we don't do that. We just say rhetoric. But in Greek, that would be rhetor. Okay, we see the rough breathing over the initial rho. Every initial rho has rough breathing. And then we see medial double rho is sometimes written with opposite breathing marks because the second rho is pronounced with rough breathing. So here we have uppercase P, then we have upsilon, then we have the lowercase rho with soft breathing marked over it. So we pronounce that as pur. And then the second syllable, we have the initial rho with rough breathing, followed by omicron and a final sigma. And we would pronounce that as hros, pur hros. So note the breathing marks over the Greek rho. And then in note 14, we simply have a little historical note. The sign for rough breathing is derived from H, the uppercase H, which in the old Attic alphabet was used to denote what we would consider the letter H. Thus we have the article ho. You see it's the omicron with rough breathing, ho. So that's just a historical note that, again, read through it, learn, become familiar with what it says, but let the assessment in the lesson guide your study. Anyway, from Articles 9 through 14, we've looked at the Greek breathing marks and what they signify. It's really a very simple lesson. All you really need to pay attention to is the fact that rough breathing, which is the symbol that looks like a small letter C, is equivalent to adding an H to the beginning of the word before the vowel. Very simple lesson. So read the content of Articles 9 through 14. Make sure you understand what you read there. If you have any questions about this lesson, post your questions on the support forum, on the course page on the Study Center. But I think this is a pretty simple lesson. Now remember, it's assumed in this Greek grammar course that you're also studying the Academy's Greek reading course. So when you learn things like this, when you learn about breathing marks, pay attention to them in your reading lessons because you'll see all of these grammar rules on display in those reading lessons. All right, I hope that's helpful. If you've got any questions, please post on the forum and keep working through Greek grammar. It's really not that difficult. And in a small amount of time, while also studying Greek reading, you'll be reading Greek fluently and understand what everything you see in the Greek text means. That's the goal of grammar studies. I hope that's helpful. God bless.